A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Read by Mark Scoggins. Stave 1. Marley's Ghost. Marley was dead. To begin with, there's no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead? Of course he did. Scrooge and Marley were partners for I don't know how many years. But he was a tight-fisted hand to the grindstone, was old Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful will come from the story that I am about to relate. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on a foggy, cold, bleak Christmas Eve, our story begins.
Tidings of comfort and joy, from heaven, Lord, Heavenly Father, of blessing and
Quiet! Here comes old Scrooge. Is it not enough I walk a snowstorm without beggars blocking my way? Out of my way, I'll take a stick to you. Good afternoon, Mr. Scrooge. Mr. Cratchit, what are you doing with that shovel full of coal? It's bitterly cold, sir. I thought to warm the office. But one more piece of coal today, and you and I shall part company. Do you take my meaning, clerk? Yes, sir. Now, you get that letter from Higgins and Blackthorn, Cratchit, and then I want you to finish posting this ledger. And after that, you can pop over to Parthagill's and tell Ephraim Parthagill you've come after the 17 shillings and 6pence he's owed me since Michaelmas. And tell him that I shall have a constable over there if he doesn't pay up at once.
Mr. Parthagill's wife has been ill, sir.
What do I care about his wife? I want my 17 and 6.
Well, I just thought it being Christmas, sir.
Christmas. You mention that word to me once more, Bob Cratchit, and I'll see to it.
A Merry Christmas, Uncle. A Merry Christmas, Bob. Well, Merry Christmas, Mr. Fred. God save you, Uncle.
Humbug.
Christmas? A humbug, Uncle? Now, I'm sure you don't mean that.
I mean just that. Exactly that. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you? You're poor enough.
Well, what right have you to be dismal, Uncle? You're rich enough.
Bah.
Now, Uncle, don't be cross.
Well, what else can I be, when I live in such a world of fools as this? What's Merry Christmas to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer? Well, if I worked my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips would be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stick of holly through his heart. Uncle, nephew, keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine.
Keep it? But you don't keep it.
Well, let me leave it alone, then.
I still say Merry Christmas, Uncle.
That's all you do say. Much good may Christmas do you, much good it has ever done you.
There are many things from which I derive good by which I have not profited. I dare say Christmas among the rest. But I've always thought of Christmas time as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe it has done me good, and will do me good, and I say God bless it.
Very well said, sir. Let me hear another sound out of you there, Bob Cratchit, and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. As to you, nephew, you're quite a powerful speaker. I wonder you don't go into Parliament. You talk enough nonsense.
Oh, don't be angry, Uncle. I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why can't we be friends?
Good afternoon.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Well, I tried. Merry Christmas to you, Bob, and the missus, and to Tiny Tim. And Merry Christmas to you, Uncle.
Good afternoon.
And a Happy New Year.
Good afternoon. And there's another one. My clerk. 15 shillings a week, a wife, and a family, talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam. Cratchit, there's someone at the door. Go and see who it is.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Is this the firm of Scrooge and Marley?
Yes, sir.
We should like to see the head of the firm, if we may.
Oh, very good, sir.
What is it?
These gentlemen here to see you, Mr. Scrooge.
What? Have we the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? Mr. Marley is dead. He died 7 years ago, this very night. Well, now, Mr. Scrooge, at this season of the year, it's only fitting that we who are more fortunate should raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink, and means of warmth. You may not believe it, sir, but many thousands are now in want of common necessities. And hundreds of thousands are in want of simplest comfort, sir. Are there no prisons?
What? Well, yes, there's plenty of prisons, sir.
And the workhouses? They're still in operation, I trust.
Yes, I wish I could say they were not.
The treadmill and the poor law are in full vigor, then?
Both very busy, sir.
Ah, I'm glad to hear it. I was afraid from what you had said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course.
No, sir. All these institutions that you mention are flourishing, but it's nevertheless true that some additional provision for the poor and the destitute must be made. A few of us, upon change, are endeavoring to raise such a fund, you see, and, well, what should we put you down for?
Nothing.
Oh, I see you wish to remain anonymous.
I wish to be left alone. I don't make merry myself at Christmas time, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments that take care of the poor. They cost enough. Let those who are badly off go there.
But many can't go there, sir, and,
well, many would rather die.
If they'd rather die, they'd better do it, and decrease the surplus population.
Besides, it's not my business. It's enough for a man to understand his own business, and not to interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, sirs. Cratchit, show these gentlemen out.
Yes, sir. This way, sirs, if you please. Sir, I couldn't help overhearing. I should like to contribute tuppence.
Cratchit!
Yes, sir. It isn't much, but it's all I can afford. But there are others in worse situation than I.
You're a generous fellow. I wish I might say so of your employer. Cratchit!
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
Cratchit!
Merry Christmas.
Well, Merry Christmas.
Close the door. Yes, sir.
Cratchit, what's the idea of snuffing out that candle?
Well, it's getting late, sir.
Oh, well, don't work too late. You might make something of yourself.
Yes, sir. It's just that, well, it's being Christmas Eve, sir, and it's almost closing time.
I suppose you'll want the entire day tomorrow.
If quite convenient, sir.
It's not convenient, and it's not fair. But I suppose I can't do anything about it. If I was to stop half-a-crown of your wages, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound.
Well, sir,
you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work.
It's only once a year, sir.
A fine excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. I suppose you must have the whole day. Well, see that you're here all the earlier the next morning.
The clerk promised that he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl. The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk, with the long ends of his white comforter dangling below his waist, for he boasted no great coat, went down a slide on Corn Hill, at the end of a lane of boys 20 times in honor of its being Christmas Eve, and then he ran home to Camden Town, as hard as he could pelt to play at blind man's bluff. Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers and beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's book, went home. He lived in the chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suite of rooms. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door, except that it was very large. It is also a fact that Scrooge had seen it night and morning during his whole residence in that place. Also, that Scrooge had as little of what is called fancy about him as any man in the city of London. Let it also be borne in mind that Scrooge had not bestowed one thought on Marley since his last mention of a 7 years dead partner that afternoon. And then let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, without its undergoing any intermediate process of change, not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face. It was not an impenetrable shadow as the other objects in the yard were, but had a dismal light about it. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up on its ghostly forehead. The hair was curiously stirred, as if by breath or hot air, and though the eyes were wide open, they were perfectly motionless. As Scrooge looked fixedly at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again. To say that he was not startled would be untrue, but he put his hand upon the key he had relinquished, turned it sturdily, and walked in. He lighted his candle. He did pause with a moment's irresolution before he shut the door, and he did look cautiously behind it. At first he half expected to be terrified with the sight of Marley's pigtails sticking out into the hall. But there was nothing on the back of the door, except the screws and nuts that held the knocker on. So he said, "Humbug." Up the staircase he went, trimming his candle along the way. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. At the top of the stairs he reached his bedroom, and closed the big heavy door behind him. He locked himself in, double-locked himself in, which was not his custom. He took off his cravat, put on his dressing-gown and slippers and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. It was a very low fire indeed, and he was obliged to sit close to it and brood over it. The fireplace was an old one, paved all around with quaint Dutch tiles. If each tile had been a blank at first, now there was a copy of old Marley's head on every one. Scrooge drew back deep into his chair. His glance happened upon a disused bell that hung high in the room. The bell began to swing. It rang out softly, so softly at first that it could scarcely be heard. Then it rang out loudly. So did every bell in the house. This might have lasted half a minute or a minute, but it seemed an hour. The bells ceased as they had begun. They were succeeded by a clanking noise deep down below. And then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door. It's humbug still. I won't believe it. His color changed, though, when without a pause it came on through the big heavy door and passed into the room before his eyes. Scrooge looked the phantom through and through. He felt the chilling influence of his death-cold eyes. How now? What do you want with me? Much. Who are you? Ask me who I was. All right. Who were you then? In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley. Can you sit down? I can. Do it then. You don't believe in me. I don't. What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses? I don't know. Why do you doubt your senses? Because a little thing affects them. Slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. Why, there's more gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are. At this the spirit raised a frightful cry, and shook its chain with such a dismal and appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling in a swoon. But how much greater was his horror when the phantom, taking off the bandage round its head, as if it were too warm to wear indoors, its lower jaw dropped upon its breast. Mercy, dreadful apparition! Why do you trouble me?
Man of the worldly mind, do you believe in me or not?
I do. I must. But why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes forth not in life,
it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander the world. Oh, woe is me. And witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth, and turn to happiness. You're fettered. Tell me why.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it. Link by link, and yard by yard.
I girded it out of my own free will,
and out of my own free will, I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full, as heavy, and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain.
Jacob, oh, Jacob Marley, tell me more, but speak comfort to me, Jacob.
I have none to give. It comes from other regions, Ebenezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. A very little more is all permitted to me. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me! In life, my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole.
And weary journeys lie before me. You must have been very slow about it, Jacob.
Slow?
7 years dead and traveling the whole time.
The whole time? No rest, no peace, incessant torture of remorse.
You travel fast?
On the wings of the wind.
You might have got over a great quantity of ground in 7 years.
Oh, captive, bound and double iron!
Not to know that any Christian spirit working kindly in this little sphere, whatever it may be, will find its mortal life too short for its vast means of usefulness. Not to know no space of regret can make amends for one's life's opportunity misused. And such was I. Such was I. But you are always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. At this time of the rolling year, I suffer most. Oh,
Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down, and never raise them to that blessed star which led the wise men to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes to which its light would have conducted me?
Hear me. My time is nearly gone. I will, but please don't be hard upon me, Jacob. Please don't be flowery. How is it that I appear before you in a shape that you can see? I may not tell. I have sat invisible beside you many and many a day trying to reach you. That is no light part of my penance. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and a hope of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer. You are always a good friend to me, thank ye. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob? It is. I think I'd rather not. Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow, when the bell tolls 1. Couldn't I take them all at once and have it over, Jacob? Expect the second on the next night at the same hour, and the third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that for your own sake, Ebenezer, you remember what has passed between us. Scrooge found his supernatural visitor confronting him in an erect attitude, with his chain wound over about his arm. The apparition walked backward from him, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the spectre reached it, it was wide open. It beckoned Scrooge to approach, which he did. When they were within 2 paces of each other, Marley's ghost held up his hand, warning him to come no nearer. Scrooge stopped, not so much in obedience, but as in surprise and fear, for on the raising of the hand he became sensible of confused noises in the air, incoherent sounds of lamentation and regret, wailings inexpressibly sorrowful and self-accusatory. The spectre, after listening for a moment, joined in the mournful dirge, and floated out upon the bleak, dark night. Scrooge followed to the window, desperate in his curiosity. He looked out. The air was filled with phantoms, wandering hither and thither in restless haste, and moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Some few were linked together, none were free. Many had been personally known to Scrooge in their lives. He had been quite familiar with one old ghost in a white waistcoat, with a monstrous iron safe attached to its ankle, who cried piteously at being unable to assist a wretched woman with an infant whom it saw below upon a doorstep. The misery with them all was clearly that they had sought to interfere for good in human matters, and had lost the power forever. Whether these creatures faded into mist, or mist enshrouded them, he could not tell, but they and their spirited voices faded together, and the night became as it had been when he walked home. Scrooge closed the window, and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double-locked, as he had locked it with his own hands, and the bolts were undisturbed. And being from the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigues of the day, or his glimpse of the invisible world, or the dull conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, went straight to bed, without undressing, and fell asleep upon the instant. Stave 2, the first of 3 spirits.
Scrooge awoke. He was lying on his bed, fully dressed. Suddenly, the curtains of his bed were drawn aside, and Scrooge found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white, as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it, and the tenderest bloom was on the skin. The arms were long and muscular, the hands the same, as if its hold were of uncommon strength.
Ebenezer Scrooge.
Who is that?
Ebenezer Scrooge, I have come for you.
Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me?
I am.
What are you?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, your past.
But what do you want with me? What brings you here to haunt me?
Your welfare. Rise and walk with me.
Well, no. Out that window? Why, I can't do that. I'll fall. Spirit, I am mortal.
Bear but a touch of my hand here upon your heart, and you shall be upheld in more than this.
Well, where are we? What became of my room in the city? And there's snow upon the ground. Where are we? Wait, these boys we see, I know them. I know every one of them. Why, we were schoolmates.
These are the shadows of the things that have been. They have no consciousness of us. Do you recognize this countryside?
Oh, I know every inch of it. Every rock, every tree.
And that bleak building over there.
Ah, yes, that building. I was a boy there, yes. I went to school in that horrible place.
Do you recollect the path?
I can walk it blindfolded.
Strange you should have forgotten it for so many years. Come, let us go closer. Look through the window into that cold, barren room. What do you see, Ebenezer Scrooge?
I see a boy. A solitary child, neglected by his family. Alone. Yes, I see. I know that boy. I know. I was so lonely. Poor boy.
Your lip is trembling, Scrooge. And what is that upon your cheek?
It's nothing. Nothing at all. I wish... Well, it's too late now.
What's the matter?
Nothing. There were waifs at my door singing Christmas carols last night, and there was a boy, just like me, among them. A poor little thin little boy in a ragged coat. I should like to have given him something, that's all.
Come, Ebenezer Scrooge, let us see another Christmas.
Why, it's me again, but older now. Dear brother, I've come to bring you home. Home, little Fan. Yes, home for good and all. Father is so much kinder than he used to be. He spoke so gently to me one night that I asked him if you might come home, and he said, yes, you should, and we are to be together all Christmas long and have the merriest of times.
A gentle spirit.
She had a large heart.
Yes, and died a woman, I think. And had a child.
Yes, one child.
True, your nephew. Come. Do you know this place, Ebenezer?
Know it? Why, this is the counting house where I was apprentice. It's my old master, bless his heart, old Fezziwig, my master alive again, and holding one of his glorious Christmas parties. And there's Dick Wilkins. Poor Dick. Dear. He was very attached to me. Yes, and look, there's Mrs. Fezziwig herself, looking younger than any of them. And the table's all loaded with food, roasts and cider, mince pie and beer. Oh, what a joyous time we used to have.
The carefree young man with the light in his heart and the smile. Do you recognize him?
Yes, Yes, yes. Merciful heaven, how happy I was then.
A small matter for old Fezziwig to make those silly folks so full of joy,
Small matter.
isn't it? He has spent only a few pounds of your mortal money. Is that so much that he deserves such praise?
It's not that, Spirit, it's not that. Old Fezziwig had the power to make us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or a toil. His power lies in words and looks and things that it's impossible to count, and the happiness he gives is quite as great as if it costs.
What's the matter?
Oh, nothing at all, Spirit.
Something, I think.
No.
Speak.
Well, it's just that I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk, Bob Cratchit, just now. That's all.
My time grows short.
Where now?
Come. This fair young girl by your side. Do you recognize yourself, Ebenezer?
No, please spare me this.
You're older now. A man in prime of life. Your face has begun to wear the signs of care and avarice. Your eyes are greedy. The eager, restless eyes of a miser.
No, please.
She knows it too. That girl by your side. There are tears in her eyes.
It matters little to you. Very little. I know that. Belle, have I changed toward you? When we were engaged, we were both poor. Was it better then? Better to be poor? Better at least to be happy. You've changed. You were another man. I was a boy. You blame me because I've grown wiser? Have I ever tried to break our engagement? In words? No. Never. In what, then? In a changed nature. In an altered spirit. In everything that made my love of any value in your sight. So, with a heavy heart, Ebenezer, I release you from your promise. When our engagement was made, we were young, poor, and content to be so. I was a dowerless girl, and you, who weigh everything by gain, if you were to seek me out now, would you be content? Ah, no. Ebenezer, I do release you. Oh, at first it may cause you pain. A very brief time, and it will be over, but soon it will be dim, like a half-remembered dream, an unprofitable dream. And you will be glad to be awake from such a dream. May you be happy in the life you have chosen, Ebenezer, for the love of whom you once loved. That's enough! Show me no more! Take me home!
These were shadows of things that have been. They are what they are. Do not blame me.
No more! No more!
One shadow more. Come.
Spirit, I cannot bear it. Please, no more. Leave me. Haunt me no more. Take me back. Take me back, Spirit. Remove me from this place.
I told you. These were shadows of things that have been. They are what they are. Do not blame me.
Remove me. I cannot bear it. He turned upon the ghost, and seeing that it looked upon him with a face in which some strange way there were fragments of all the faces he had shown him, and he wrestled with it. Leave me! Take me back! Haunt me no longer! In the struggle, if it can be called a struggle in which the ghost, with no visible resistance on its own, was undisturbed by any efforts of its adversary, Scrooge observed that its light was burning high and bright, and dimly connected that with its influence over him. He seized the extinguisher cap that it held, and by a sudden action pressed it down upon its head. The spirit dropped beneath it, so that the extinguisher covered its whole form. But though Scrooge pressed it down with all of his force, he could not hide the light, which streamed from under it in an unbroken flood upon the ground. Scrooge was conscious of being exhausted, and overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, and further of being in his own bedroom. He gave the cap a parting squeeze, in which his hand relaxed, and had barely time to reel to bed, before he sank into a deep, heavy sleep. Stave 3, the second of the three spirits. Awakening in the middle of a prodigiously tough snore, and sitting up in bed to get his thoughts together, Scrooge had no occasion to be told that the bell was again upon the stroke of 1. He felt that he was restored to consciousness in the right nick of time, for the especial purpose of holding a conference with the second messenger dispatched to him through Jacob Marley's intervention. But finding that he turned uncomfortably cold when he began to wonder which of his curtains this new spectre would draw back, he put them back every one aside with his own hands, and lying down established a sharp lookout all around the bed, for he wished to challenge the spirit on the moment of its appearance, and did not wish to be taken surprise and made nervous. Now, being prepared for almost anything, he was not by any means prepared for nothing, and consequently, when the bell struck 1, and no shape appeared, he was taken with a violent fit of trembling. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a quarter of an hour went by, yet nothing came. All this time he lay upon his bed, the very core and center of a blaze of ruddy light, which streamed upon it when the clock proclaimed the hour, and which, being only light, was more alarming than a dozen ghosts, as he was powerless to make out what it meant. At last, however, he began to think. The source of the secret of the ghostly light might be in the adjoining room, from whence on further tracing it seemed to shine. This idea taking full possession of his mind, he got up slowly, and shuffled in his slippers to the door. The moment Scrooge's hand was on the lock, a strange voice called him by name, and bade him enter. "Come in, Ebenezer!" It was his own room, there was no doubt about that, but it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove, from every part of which bright gleaming berries glistened. The crisp leaves of holly, mistletoe, and ivy reflected back the light, as if so many little mirrors had been scattered there. And such a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney, as that dull petrification of a hearth had never known in Scrooge's time, or Marley's, or for many and many a winter season gone. Heaped upon the floor to form a kind of throne were turkeys, geese, game, poultry, brawn, great joints of meat, sucking pigs, long wreaths of sausage, mince pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-peaked apples, juicy oranges, luscious pears, immense twelfth cakes, and seething bowls of punch that made the chamber dim with their delicious steam. In an easy state upon this couch there sat a jolly giant, glorious to see. He bore a glowing torch, in shape not unlike Plenty's horn, and held it up high to shed its light on Scrooge as he came peeping round the door. Come in and know me better, man!" Scrooge entered timidly, and hung his head before the spirit. He was not the dogged Scrooge he had been, and though the spirit's eyes were clear and kind, he did not like to meet them. Come in, Ebenezer Scrooge, and know me better, man." Who? I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. You've never seen the like of me before. You're different from the other spirit. You're tall, almost a giant, and that great torch you carry. Its light pours into the homes of rich and poor alike. Spirit, take me where you will. Yes, last time I went against my will and learnt a lesson which is working now. If you have anything to teach me, Let me profit by it. Well, touch my robe, Ebenezer Scrooge. Touch my robe. Where have you brought me, Spirit? A humble dwelling in a humble street. It's humble enough. Yet there is happiness here. Who are these people? Who's that woman and the children? These are the family of your clerk, Bob Cratchit. His wife, dressed in a twice-turned gown, but brave in ribbons, laying the table for their Christmas dinner. And there, assisting her, is her daughter Belinda, and the young man with a fork in the stuffing. That's Master Peter Cratchit, and the two little Cratchits. Listen, Scrooge. Here's Martha, Mother. Oh, Martha's here. Why, bless your heart alive, Martha, my dear, Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas, Mother. Oh, Merry Christmas, everyone. How late you are, my dear. Oh, we had a deal of work to finish up last night, and we had to clear away this morning. Well, never you mind, so long as you've come now. Now sit ye down before the fire and have a warm Lord bless ye. Where's Father? He's been to church with Tiny Tim. They'll be along directly. How is Tiny Tim, Mother? Any better at all? Well, sometimes I think he is, and sometimes I think, oh, dear God, if anything should happen to Tiny Tim. Mother, you mustn't even think such things. Oh, here they are. There's Tiny Tim.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Martha, welcome, my dear.
Merry Christmas, Father. And Tim? Merry Christmas, Martha. Oh, Tim, you darling. Oh, Father, I'm so glad you're home.
And we're glad to have you, Martha.
And how did little Tim behave in church, Bob? Oh, as good as gold and better. I like church, Mother. Oh, when they sing the nicest songs. I hope people saw me there.
Saw you there? Well, why, little Tim?
Well, don't you see? Because I'm lame, and if they saw my crutch, well, it might be pleasant for them to remember on Christmas who it was that made lame beggars walk and blind men see.
Oh, bless you, my son.
Are we ready to eat, Mother? Come on, let's eat. Yes, children, yes, we're all ready. Come on, take your places now. And Bob, you wait your turn, there's plenty. Stuffing and dressing and plum pudding for all of you. Martha, will you take care of Tiny Tim? Yes, Mother. You see, he eats plenty. He must get tall and well now. Sit down, everyone.
Oh, now, my dears, shall we say grace?
Spirit, tell me, will Tiny Tim live?
I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved.
Oh, no, kind Spirit. Say he will be spared. Say he will live.
If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, Ebenezer, the child will die. And now, my dears, with such a dinner, a toast. God bless us, every one. Amen.
God bless us, every one.
And now, I give you a toast to Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast.
The founder of the feast? Ha! Who pays you all of 15 shillings a week? I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast on, and I'd hope he'd have a good appetite for it.
Oh, my dear, the children, it's Christmas Day.
Well, it should be Christmas Day, I'm sure, on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you, poor fellow.
My dear, Christmas Day?
I'll drink his health for your sake, and for the day's, not for his. Long life to him, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope he'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt. And I say, God bless him too, Mother, and everyone.
There was nothing of high mark in all of this. They were not a handsome family, these Cratchits. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty, and had known very likely the inside of a pawnbroker's. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and content with the time. When at last they faded, Scrooge had his eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim, until the last. Many calls Scrooge made that night with the ghost of Christmas present. Down among the miners they went, who labor in the bowels of the earth, and out to sea among the sailors at their watch, dark ghostly figures in their several stations.
Much they saw, and far they went, and many places they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirits stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful, on foreign lands, and they were close at home, by poverty, and it was rich, in almshouse, hospital, and jail, where vain man in his little brief authority had not made fast the door, and barred the spirit out. The spirit left his blessing. It was a long night, if it was only a night, and it was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered in his outward form, the ghost grew older, clearly older. It was with great surprise to Scrooge, while listening to the moaning of the wind and thinking what a solemn thing it was to move on through the lonely darkness over an unknown abyss, whose depths were secrets as profound as death. It was with great surprise to Scrooge, while thus engaged, to hear a hearty laugh. It was a much greater surprise to Scrooge to recognize it as his own nephew's, and to find himself in a bright, dry, gleaming room, with the spirit standing smiling beside him, and looking at that same nephew with approving affability. When Scrooge's nephew laughed in this way, holding his sides, rolling his head, and twisting his face into the most extravagant extortions, Scrooge's niece by marriage laughed as heartily as she could. He said Christmas was a humbug, as I live, and he believed it, too. More shame for him, Fred. Well, he's a comical old fellow, my dear wife. That's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offenses carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him. I'm sure he is very rich, Fred. At least, you always tell me so. Well, what of that, my dear? His wealth is of no use to him. He don't do any good with it. He don't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking that he's ever going to benefit us with it. I have no patience with him. Oh, I have. I'm sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself, always. Here, he takes it in his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us. Well, what's the consequence? He don't lose much of a dinner. Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner. Come, Scrooge, we must move on.
Oh, but can we stay, please? They're about to play games. Only 1/2 hour more, Spirit, only one.
It was a game called Yes and No, where Scrooge's nephew had to think of something, and the rest must find out what, he only answering to their questions yes or no, as the case was. The brisk fire of questioning to which he was exposed elicited from him that he was thinking of an animal, a live animal, a rather disagreeable animal, and a savage one, an animal that growled and grunted sometimes and talked sometimes, and lived in London, and walked about the streets, and wasn't made of show, and wasn't led by anybody, and didn't live in a menagerie. He was never killed in a market, and was not a horse, or an ass, or a cow, or a bull, or a tiger, or a dog, or a pig, or a cat, or a bear. At every fresh question that was put upon him, the nephew burst into fresh roar of laughter, and was so inexpressibly tickled that he was obliged to get up off the sofa and stamp. At the last, a plump sister, falling into a similar state, cried out, I have found it! I know what it is, Fred! I know what it is! What is it? It's your Uncle Scrooge! Oh, yes, yes. He has given us plenty of merriment, I'm sure, and it would be ungrateful not to drink to his health. Here is a glass of mulled wine ready to our hand at the moment, and I say, Uncle Scrooge, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man, whatever he is. He wouldn't take it from me, but may he have it nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge. Uncle Scrooge had become so gay and light of heart that he would have pledged the unconscious company in return, and thanked them in an inaudible speech, if the ghost had given him time. But the whole scene passed off in the breath of the last words spoken by his nephew, and he and the spirit went again upon their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirit stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful, on foreign lands, and they were close at home, by struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope, by poverty, and it was rich, in almshouse, hospital, and jail, in misery's every refuge, where vain man in his little brief authority had not made fast the door and barred the spirit out. He left his blessing, and taught Scrooge his precepts. It was a long night, if only it was a night. But Scrooge had his doubts of this because the Christmas holidays appeared to be condensed into the space and time they passed together. It was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered in his outward form, the ghost grew older, clearly older. Scrooge had observed this change, but never spoke of it, until they left a children's 12th night party, when looking at the spirit as they stood together in an open place, he noticed that its hair was gray. "Are spirits' life so short?"
"My life upon this globe is very brief. It ends tonight."
"Tonight?"
"Tonight at midnight. Hark! The time is drawing near."
Forgive me if I'm not justified in what I ask, but I see something strange and not belonging to yourself protruding from your skirts. Is it a foot or a claw?"
"It might be a claw, for the flesh there is upon it. Look here, man."
From the folding of its robe, it brought out 2 children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They knelt down at its feet and clung upon the outside of its garment.
"Oh, man, look!"
They were a boy and a girl, yellow, meager, ragged, scowling, and wolfish, where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints. A stale and shriveled hand like that of age had pinched and twisted them and pulled them into shreds. Scrooge started back appalled. "Spirit, are they yours?"
"They are man's, and they cling to me appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorant. This girl is wanted. Beware them both, in all their degree, but most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased."
Have they no refuge or resource?
"Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?"
Oh, my own words. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost and saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. Stave 4. The Last of the Spirits. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible but one outstretched hand. But for this, it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night, and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come? You are about to show me shadows of things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us. Is that so, spirit? Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? Lead on, spirit. Lead on. Lead on, spirit. The night is waning fast, and it's precious time to me. I know that now. Lead on, spirit. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them, and encompass them of its own act. The ghost of the future brought Scrooge to a humble dwelling. They entered. Spirit, why have you brought me here again? Here to Bob Cratchit's home. But it's not the same. Why is it so quiet? So very quiet here. It's late. Past your father's time. He's walked slowly these past few evenings, Mother. I've known him to walk very fast indeed with Tiny Tim on his shoulder. But he was light to carry. And his father loved him so that it was no trouble. It was no trouble. You went today, then, Robert? Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone with me. It would have done you good. To see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that we would walk there every Sunday. My little child. Father, dear, please don't be grieved. There. I'm all right now. I'm all right. I'm sure none of us will ever forget our poor Tiny Tim. No, Father, never. That makes me happy. Very happy indeed. Oh, I love you all, my dears. Oh, that's cruel, cruel, Spectre. Can't you give me one ray of hope that I may change all that, so that Tiny Tim may live? Where are you taking me now? Here? On this common street, Spirit? What is there for me to learn here? The Spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead. Well, when did he die? Last night, I believe. It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for upon my life, I don't know anyone to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer. Well, I don't mind going if lunch is provided. Come to think of it, I bet I was his best friend. What? Well, we nodded to each other once when we met on the street. Spectre, help me. Who is this man that died? Is there no one to mourn this poor creature? No one to follow him to the grave? Perhaps they'll give him a green grave at least. Like poor Tiny Tim, perhaps. Speakers and listeners strolled away and mixed with their groups. Scrooge looked towards the Spirit for an explanation. The phantom glided into a street. Scrooge looked about in that very place for his own image, but another man stood in his accustomed corner, and though the clock pointed to his usual time of day for being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes. They left the busy scene, and went into an obscure part of town, where Scrooge had never been before, although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. The ways were foul and narrow, the shops and houses wretched, the people half-naked, drunk and slipshod, ugly. Alleys and archways, like so many cesspools, disgorged their offences of smell and dirt and life upon the straggling streets, and the whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth, and misery. For in this din of infamous resort there was a low-browed beetling shop. The Spectre pointed towards the door. Scrooge understood and entered. Scrooge and the Phantom came into the presence of a man, just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. You couldn't have met in a better place. Come into the parlor. Come into the parlor. Stop till I shut the door of the shop. Oh, how it squeaks. There ain't such a rusty bit of metal in the place as its own hinges, I believe. And I'm sure there's no such old bones here as mine. We're all suitable to our calling. Come into the parlor. Come back into the parlor. The parlor? was the space behind the screen of rags. The old man raked the fire together with an old stair-rod, and having trimmed his smoky lamp, for it was night, with the stem of his pipe, he put it back into his mouth again. While he did this, the woman threw her bundle on the floor and sat down in a flaunting manner on a stool, crossing her elbows on her knees, and looked at him with a bold defiance.
Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did.
Well, that's true, indeed. No man more so.
Why, then, don't sit there staring as if you was afraid, woman. Who's the wiser? We're not going to pick holes in each other's coat, I suppose. No, indeed, I should hope not. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? If he wanted them there after he was dead, the wicked old screw, why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have had somebody to look after him there when he was struck with death, instead of lying gasping out his last there, alone by himself. If I could have laid my hands on anything else. Open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it. Speak plain, it's no sin. Open that bundle, Joe.
Joe, having unfastened a great many knots, dragged out towels, little wearing apparel, 2 old-fashioned silver teaspoons, a pair of sugar tongs, and a few boots.
What you call these?
Bed curtains?
Ah, bed curtains.
You don't mean to say you took them down, rings and all, with him lying there?
Yes, I do. Why not?
You were born to make your fortune, and you'll certainly do it. What's this? Is blankets?
Who else you think? He isn't going to likely take cold without 'em, I dare say.
Well, I sure hope he didn't die of anything catching.
Don't you be afraid of that. I ain't so fond of his company that I'd order about him for such things, if he did. Ah, you may look through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find a hole in it, nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and it's a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me.
What do you call wasting of it?
Putting it on him to be buried in, for sure. Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again. If calico ain't good enough for such a purpose, it isn't good enough for anything. It's quite as becoming to the body. He can't look any uglier than he did in that one.
Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror, as they sat grouped about their spoil in the scanty light offered by the old man's lamp.
Let's see, 17, 37, well, there you are. That's your account. And I wouldn't give another 6pence if I was to be boiled for not doing it. I always give too much to the ladies. It's a weakness of mine, and that's the way I ruin myself. That's your account. If you asked me for another penny, I'd repent of being so liberal, and I'd knock off half a crown. This is the end of it, you see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive, to profit us when he was dead.
Spirit, I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven, what is this? Scrooge recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, there lay something covered up. The room was very dark, too dark to be observed with any accuracy, though Scrooge glanced round it, anxious to know what kind of room it was. A pale light, rising in the outer air, fell straight upon the bed, and on it, plundered and bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this man. Scrooge glanced towards the phantom. The spectre slowly pointed toward the body.
Spirit, this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. Trust me. Let us go.
The spirit pointed toward the body again.
I understand you, and I would do it if I could, but I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power. Is there any person in town who feels emotion caused by this man's death? Show that person to me, Spirit, I beseech you.
The phantom spread its dark robe before him for a moment, like a wing, and withdrawing it, revealed a room by daylight where a mother and her children were. She was expecting someone, and with anxious eagerness, for she walked up and down the room, started at every sound, looked out from the window, glanced at the clock, tried, but in vain, to work with her needle, and could hardly bear the voices of the children in their play. At length the long-expected knock was heard. She hurried to the door and met her husband, a man whose face was careworn and depressed, though he was young. There was a remarkable expression in it now, a kind of serious delight, of which he felt ashamed, and which he struggled to repress. He sat down to the dinner that had been boarding for him by the fire, and when she asked him faintly what news, which was not until after a long silence, he appeared embarrassed to answer. "Is it good or bad?" "Bad." "We are quite ruined." No, there is hope yet, Caroline." "If he relents, there is. Nothing is past hope. If such a miracle has happened." He is past relenting. He is dead." "Dead? Well, to whom will our debt be transferred?" "I don't know, dear wife, but by that time we shall have the money." "Spectre, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand." "I know it, but I know not how." The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him as before, though at a different time, he thought. Indeed, there seemed no order in these latter visions, save that they were in the future, into the resort of businessmen, but showed him not himself. Indeed, the spirit did not stay for anything, but went straight on, as to the end just now desired, until besought by Scrooge to tarry for a moment. "These courts through which we hurry now is where my place of occupation is, and has been for a length of time. I see the house. Let me behold where I shall be in days to come." The spirit stopped. The hand was pointed elsewhere. "The house is yonder. Why do you point away?" Scrooge hastened to the window of his office and looked in. It was an office still, but not his. The furniture was not the same, and the figure in the chair was not himself. The phantom pointed as before. He joined it once again, and wondering why and whither he had gone, accompanied it until they reached an iron gate. He paused to look around before entering. The spectre pointed and the gate opened. A churchyard. Here, then, the wretched man whose name he had now to learn lay underneath the ground. It was a worthy place, walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of vegetation's death, not life, choked up with it too much burying fat with repleted appetite. A worthy place. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Scrooge advanced towards it, trembling. The phantom was exactly as it had been, but Scrooge dreaded that he saw a new meaning in its solemn shape. Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they the shadows of things that may be only?" The spirit pointed down to the grave. "Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, to which, if preserved in, they must lead. Ha ha ha! But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it is thus with what you show me." The phantom, again, with his long, outstretched hand, pointed down to the grave. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. "Spectre, am I the man who lay upon that bed?" Oh no! No! Spirit, hear me! I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Oh, why show me this if I am past all hope? Oh, good spirit, your nature intercedes for me and pities me. I will honor Christmas in my heart, and I will try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. O spirit, the spirit of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me that I may sponge away the writing on this stone!
Scrooge, holding up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the Phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost.
Well, my room. I'm back in my room. Oh, the bed curtains, they're not torn down. Oh, spirit. Oh, spirit. Oh, I don't know what to do. I'm as giddy as a boy. I'm as light as a feather. I'm as happy as an angel. Oh, the sun. The sun is shining. It's clear. It's bright. No fog. Ooh, it's cold. Oh, glorious. Glorious. You there, boy. Oi? What's today? What's that, sir? What's today, my fine fellow? Today? Why, it's Christmas Day. Christmas Day. Oh, then I haven't missed it. Why, the spirits have done it all in one night. All in one night. Oh, of course they can. They can do anything they like. Listen, my lad. You know where the poultry is in the next street? Oh, I can say I do. An intelligent boy. A remarkable boy. Tell me, do you know if they've sold the prize turkey? Not the little one, but the big one. What? The one as big as me? What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure talking to him. Yes, me buck. Why, it's in there now. Wonderful. Wonderful. Go and buy it. Go on. No, I'm in earnest. Go and buy it. You come back in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown. Walker! That's wonderful. I'll go down and I'll send it to Bob Cratchit and his family. Oh, they won't know who sent it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. I must get dressed. Oh, I have so much to do. Hello there. Merry Christmas. A Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas, everybody. Oh, hello there. You too. Oh, good morning to all of you. Oh, Merry Christmas. Oh, my dear sir. How do you do?
Well, I beg your pardon?
Well, sir, Mr. Scrooge? Yes, that is my name, and I'm sure it may not be pleasant to you. I hope you succeeded in your efforts yesterday.
Why, yes, sir.
Well, if you would allow me to ask your pardon, and if you will have the goodness to accept...
Well, Lord bless me. My dear Scrooge, are you serious?
If you please, not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favor?
Well, yes, my dear sir.
I don't know what to say. Well, you don't need to say anything. Come and see me, will you? Will you come and see me?
Oh, I will. I will indeed.
Thank ye. I am much obliged to you. 50 times bless you, Merry Christmas. Oh, I must go visit Fred. Yes, that's what I'll do. Is your master at home, my dear? Yes, sir. He's in the dining room, sir, along with mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please. Thank you. He knows me. This way, my dear. I will go in here. Fred. Why, bless my soul. Who's that? It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I've come to dinner. If you'll have me, Fred. Fred rushed to his Uncle Scrooge and shook his hand. It's a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. Scrooge was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did all of the guests. So did everyone when they came in. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful happiness. But Scrooge, oh, but he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming in late, that was the thing he had set his heart upon. And he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. A quarter past. No Bob. He was a full 18 minutes and a half past his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open, that he might confront Bob as he entered. Bob came rushing in, his hat off before he opened the door. He was in his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen, as if he were trying to take over 9 o'clock.
What do you mean by coming here this time of day?
I'm sorry, sir. I'm behind me time.
Yes, you are. You are indeed, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please.
It's only once a year, sir. We were making rather merry yesterday, and it shall not be repeated.
Now, I'll tell you what, my friend. I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, I'm about to raise your salary.
Bob trembled and got a little nearer to a ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him and calling to the people in the court for help at his strait waistcoat. A Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. Yes, Bob, I will raise your salary, and endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon, over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Bob, make up the fires, and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city ever knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with the spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. If any man alive possessed the knowledge, may that truly be said of us, and of all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, every one.